So to regroup, we can solve a quadratic equation by drawing it out. Draw the parabola and find the x-intercept on your graphing calculator. Now, of course, if you don't have a graphing calculator, you need to create a table of values. And you're going to estimate the zeros by literally trying different value of x. And eventually, the one that gives us 0 for the y value would then be the answer, or the x-intercept on your parabola, which eventually will be the root of your quadratic equation. So how do we use x-intercept to solve word problems? In example number 3, we have a word problem that looks very similar to what we did in the previous unit. Here we are given a quadratic function to represent the height of the basketball thrown by a player. And they have equations look similar to what we did in the previous unit, like y equals negative 4.9 x squared plus 15x plus 1. This is basically the same thing here. If you were to draw it out on your graphing calculator, this quadratic equation will give us a parabola. And let me zoom it back to the regular window. Here is the parabola. But this parabola isn't realistic, as in, if you were to talk about a basketball, shooting a basketball, if this is the height, and on the x-axis, if it is to represent the time, it doesn't make sense for your parabola starting from some negative value and then go to the maximum point and hit 0 and go negative again. When we are talking about shooting the basket, we don't expect negative value for the height. And certainly we don't expect negative value for the time. So in this case, we want to start with some assumption that the basketball, after you shoot it, the basketball will land on the ground, which means it is not going to make a deep hole and have the basketball sink all the way into the earth, which means I'm expecting the height to be 0 at this point. So if I have the height of this quadratic function to be 0, we are now dealing with a quadratic equation. And this equation can now be solved using your graphing calculator. I can use my calculator to find the zeros and move my cursor here and there to find the 0 in the middle. I have negative 0.065 as one of them. Yeah, this number doesn't make sense to us. If we're talking about time, there is no way you get a negative time. But there is another zeros on your parabola. Second, calculate, find the 0 on the right hand side, and move my cursor here. Pick a point on the left, pick a point on the right, and we will now get this 0, 3.13. So knowing how this number doesn't make sense, we are not going to use it. This is not possible. It is impossible to have negative time for your x. So the only answer in this case would then be 3.13 seconds. The x here is to represent the time. And that means it takes 3.13 seconds for the ball to land.